Good morning, dear students. This is your teacher Neelam Helawat, and today we will start with a new chapter, and that too very, very interesting. That is metals and non-metals. Dear students, in class 9th, you must have learned about the various elements. And now we know that elements can be grouped, can be divided into metals and the non-metals on the basis of their properties. So can you give me an example of few metals that we use in our daily life? Yes, very good, very good. See, we use gold, yes. We use platinum, we use silver, we use aluminium, iron, isn't it? So these are all your metals that we are using in daily life. Gold, platinum, silver we are using to make ornaments. Aluminium we are using to make utensils. Iron we are using to make the vehicles, isn't it? And apart from this, there are many non-metals also that we use in our daily life. Like we are using oxygen because we are breathing oxygen. We are using carbon. Like wood is made up of carbon, paper is made up of carbon. So carbon also is a very important part of our life, right? But the properties of metals and non-metals, they are quite different from each other. So in totality, I can say that our life depends on metals and non-metals. And these two elements, basically, our life revolves around them. Okay? Our life depends upon them. Okay, so let's study in detail regarding the properties of metals and non-metals. So as I told you, elements we can categorize into metals, non-metals and metalloids also. Metalloids basically are the intermediate. They possesses the properties, some properties of metals and some properties of metals. And a very few examples are silicon, that we can represent it with symbol Si. Germanium, the symbol is Ge. Antimony or stibbium with the symbol is Sb. So elements have been categorized into three categories: metals, non-metals and metalloids. Now let's discuss in detail the physical properties of metals. Physical properties means the properties that we can observe, we can see. Okay. In your previous classes also you have studied regarding the physical properties of metals. So again we'll be taking them. Like I have listed a picture here. See, this is a copper. We use copper wires in our houses. Lead, tin, the nickel metal, aluminium foil that we are using, zinc. So all these elements that we are using in our daily life, they all are metals. Okay, although they are used for different purposes in our life, but they all have been grouped together in a single category which is called as metals. Now if you see, dear students, elements, they are making different kinds of substances. Okay, we use different kinds of substances present around us. We are using them and they are made up of elements, and elements have been categorized into metals and non-metals. Okay, so our life revolves around them. Now just look at the picture, everyone. Just read it. I have written a few names. Can you guess which is the metal and which is the non-metal which is present in the list? What about hydrogen? Is it a metal or a non-metal? Very good. It's a non-metal. So hydrogen is a non-metal. What about iron? Iron is a metal. Very good. Gold is also a metal. Potassium is also a metal. So I've listed 4 elements here. Out of these 3, the iron, gold and potassium, they are metals, while hydrogen is a non-metal. Now this is the modern periodic table. If you look at the modern periodic table, the silver color elements, they're all metals. So these are all metals which have been listed, and they are present on the left side of the periodic table. Okay, they are present on the left side of the periodic table. And if you look at this, these are your non-metals, while the zigzag line which is separating these metals, non-metals, which is indicated with a green color, these are your metalloids. So if we talk about the modern periodic table, in the modern periodic table, most of the elements, they are metals and they are present on the left side of the periodic table, while non-metals, they are present on the right side. In between there is a zigzag line. That zigzag line separates, you can say, constitutes the metalloids. Okay, everyone? Yes, these are the certain metals which are metalloids, which have certain properties of metals and some properties of non-metals. Now let's start with the physical properties of metals. First of all, let's talk about the physical state. Most of the metals exist as solids except mercury, which is liquid at room temperature. Okay, so most of the metals, they exist as solids at room temperature except the mercury. Now apart from the mercury, there are two metals. One is gallium, another is cesium. These two metals, when we keep these two metals on our palm, they will immediately melt. Okay, if we keep them on our palm, they will immediately melt. So although they exist as in solid state, but if you keep them on your palm, they will immediately melt to form a liquid. Okay, because these two elements have a low melting point and the heat which is present in our palm is sufficient to melt them. So we should remember, most of the metals, they exist as solids at room temperature except mercury. Second is, metals are malleable. Metals are malleable. Malleable means metals can be beaten to form thin sheets. That means we can form sheets out of the metals. If we hammer them, we can easily form sheets. You must have seen aluminium foil, isn't it, everyone? You wrap your foods in the aluminium foil, isn't it? So that aluminium foil is made up of aluminium only. So aluminium can be beaten to form the sheets, and this property of metals is called as malleability. Gold is the most malleable metal. Means if we compare all the metals out of that list, gold is the most malleable metal. And thus we will find that gold is used to make different shapes like coins, different ornaments, isn't it? Because it is the most malleable metal. The third property, that is, metals are ductile. Ductile means metals can be drawn to form wires. Okay, we can form wires out of metals, and this property is called as ductility. And dear students, platinum is the most ductile metal. Just look at the pictures. This is a wire that has been made out of aluminium. This is a wire made up of copper, and similarly you must have observed a filament which is present in the bulb that glows is made up of tungsten. Okay, so that is why I'm saying metals, they are ductile. We can make wires out of them, and these wires, they are used for some special purpose in our daily life. Metals, they are hard. Okay, metals are hard except sodium and potassium. These two metals, dear students, they are so soft. We can cut them with knife. जो सोडियम एंड पोटेशियम है बेटे, ये इतने सॉफ्ट होते हैं कि आप इन्हें आसानी से चाकू से काट सकते हो. बट कैन यू कट आयरन with a knife? No. Can you cut gold with a knife? No. Okay, so most of the metals, they are hard metals. We cannot cut them. We require special machines to cut them. Okay, but two metals, that is your sodium and potassium, they are so soft that they can be cut with knife. So these two were the you can say the exceptions. Now next property that we have is a shining surface, which is called as metallic luster. Now dear students, metals in their pure form have a shiny appearance. Like gold, as we know, gold and silver we use to make ornaments because they have a very shiny appearance. Aluminium, you can see in the picture, copper also, they all have a shining appearance. This means that they reflect the light which is falling on their surface. इन मेटल्स की सरफेस पे जब लाइट गिरती है तो ये ऑटोमेटिकली लाइट को रिफ्लेक्ट करते हैं, एंड दस इट गिव्स देम शाइनिंग अपीयरेंस. Metals are good conductor of heat. See, we are using aluminium to make utensils, isn't it? We are using aluminium to make utensils. Yes. Yes, because aluminium is a good conductor of heat. Apart from this, we are also using metals to make up the iron rods, the rods that we use to conduct heat in the water. पानी को गर्म करने के लिए जो rod हम use करते हैं, even that is made up of metal. So metals, they conduct heat, they allow heat to pass through them, and that is why they are good thermal conductors. Silver is the best conductor of heat. Okay, copper and aluminium, they are a little bit lesser than the silver, and lead is the poorest form of conductor. So metals, they allow heat to pass through them. In addition to this, metals also allow the electricity to pass through them. So they are good conductor of electricity. Means they allow current to pass through them, and this property is called as electrical conductivity, or we can say metals, they are good electrical conductors. Silver is the best conductor. Okay, and apart from this, copper and aluminium, these two, they are used to make the electrical wires because they easily allow the current to pass through them, isn't it? We must have seen the wires that we are using in our houses, the cables that have been drawn. They're all consisting of aluminium and the copper wires. Then there is a unique property in metals that when you hit the metals with a hard object, when you hit something, some metal with a hard object, they will produce sound. Okay, and this property is called sonority. So metals are sonorous in nature, right? That is why the school bells that we use in our houses, in our houses as well as in our schools, they're all made up of metals. The electrical bells also. Apart from these, you must have seen the you can say the chimes, wind chimes. They also consisting of some metal components. So when air is blown, they strike each other, they produce sound, isn't it? So metals, when they are hit with a hard object, they produce sound, and this property is referred to as sonority. Dear students, metals are very, very hard, as I told you. So they have a high density and they are very heavy, right? Because the particles or the atoms, they are tightly packed, and thus they are very tough. Okay, iridium and the osmium, they have the highest densities, while the lithium has the lowest density. जो lithium है हमारा element metal, उसकी density बहुत कम होती है, जबकि iridium और osmium की density maximum है. See, let's compare the density of the metals that have been written here. Density of gold is approximately 19.3 grams per ml, while density of ice is just 0.9 grams per ml. Aluminium is having density of 2.3 grams per ml. So most metals, they have high values. Okay, metals mostly have high density. Now next property that we have to talk about, that metals have high melting and boiling point. Okay, metals have high melting and boiling point, again because they are connected with each other with a strong force of attraction. The particles of the metals, the atoms of the you can say metals, they are tightly bonded with each other, and thus a lot of energy is required to melt them or to boil them. Okay, like tungsten, it has a very high melting point. Rhenium, it has very high melting point. Okay, and that is why, see, tungsten is a very high melting point, boiling point, and thus it is used to make the filament which is present in the bulb. And that is why tungsten is used in the press also. It is used as a heating element. Okay, that is why our press, the electrical press that we use in our houses to press our clothes, consisting of tungsten filament. Now let's summarize some of all the properties of metals. First of all, we've discussed the metals, they are solid except the mercury. Metals, they are hard except three metals like lithium, sodium, potassium. They are very, very soft and we can cut them easily with knife. Metals have a shining surface. Metals, they are malleable, means we can form thin sheets out of them. Metals are ductile, that is, we can form wires from the metals. Metals have a high melting and boiling point, but except two metals like cesium and gallium, when you put them on your palm, they will easily melt because of that heat. Okay, metals, they are good conductor of heat. Like silver and copper, they are the best conductors, while the lead and mercury, they are the poor conductors. Metals are good conductor of electricity. Silver and copper, they are the best conductor of electricity. Metals, they are sonorous, that is, when we hit the metals with a hard object, they produce sound. Now let's talk about a few properties of non-metals as well. See, non-metals, basically they exist as solids as well as gases, except one, that is your bromine, which exists bromine, which exists as a liquid. So except bromine, all other non-metals, they exist as gases or the solids at room temperature. Like non-metals, they generally exist, they are generally solids, they are brittle, they may be powdery, and they are non-malleable, or they are non-ductile, means we cannot form sheets, we cannot form wire out of them, and they do not conduct electricity as well as the heat. They are non-lustrous except iodine, which is lustrous in nature. And if you remember the periodic table, we have talked about it, that metals, they are present on the left side, while non-metals, they are present on the right side of the periodic table. Let's compare some properties. Metals, non-metals, they are non-lustrous, they have poor conductor of heat, they have low density, they have low boiling point, they are non-ductile, they are brittle. Apart from this, non-metals, they gain electrons, they take electrons and become negatively charged. Okay, thus they form the you can say they combine with metals and form the ionic bond. While metals, they combine with each other to form the covalent bonds. So अगर metal के साथ जुड़ता है, non-metal metal के साथ जुड़ता है, so they form covalent bonds, and when it combines with metal, they form ionic bonds. And fluorine is the most active non-metal. Okay, if we compare the reactivity of non-metals, we find that fluorine is the most active. As I told you that there are some metals which show some properties of, there are some elements which show some properties of metals and some properties of non-metals. So they are considered as metalloids. Metalloids, they are generally you can say they are generally solids. They may have a shiny or a dull appearance. They are ductile. They are malleable, and they conduct electricity, but they conduct lesser in comparison to the metals, and they conduct more in comparison to the non-metals. So they are somewhat in between the metals and non-metals. And a few examples that I've listed here: germanium, germanium, silicon, right? These are the few examples of metalloids. So just in this video, we've talked about the physical properties of metals, non-metals, and the metalloids. So for today, your work will be, you will be making notes of this topic, and you will read the page numbers 37 to 40. And if there is any doubt, any query, any problem you face, you can contact me personally. Okay, everyone? Okay, so that's all for today. Bye, everyone.